and as well for that lovely opening video, which did such a good job of explaining exactly what purity is. We can almost pack up our bags and go home now, because you've had all the main points already in that lovely video. But I'm sure there are yet more points that we can draw out of this subject. And Brother Erik, it's just such a delight to have you with us. I don't know why it's taken us a year to get around to having you on the program, but you're here now, and it's wonderful to have you.
Great to be here and look forward to it. And I totally agree with what you had mentioned, that everything that needed to be said has already been said. So maybe we'll just try to embroider a little around those main points, but it was a beautiful opening.
Lovely. And you're in New York at this moment, and I'm wondering if things are settling down again after your midterm excitement. It's been quite a few weeks, hasn't it?
It has. It's been a couple exciting years, and now the next race is going to begin. But yeah, we did get through some midterm elections, and there's always concern about what's going to happen. And one of the things that recognized is everybody shares the same thing, is that they're unhappy with the way things are going. And so whatever happens, some are relieved today, some are quite pleased that we haven't gone to one extreme or the other, that it's kind of the same. So we have resolved a lot of phone calls and a lot of mailing that has stopped immediately now.
I mean, we've been through a similar process here in the UK with, I think, three prime ministers in almost as many months. And I know we're going to be talking about leadership in our program today, and it almost seems like we're struggling on the global stage to find leaders that carry that vibration of integrity and purity and honesty, the qualities that we look for in leadership. They're hard to find now.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And it's very interesting, because if those are the qualities that were listed, and I started writing them down, and there were quite a few that came up there, but if those are the qualities that are connected to the topic today, purity, in our attitude, then it would make sense that the opposite qualities are connected to an impurity. And maybe there is some influences in everybody's life that keeps them from having that ability to be a good leader. And those leaders are the qualities that were mentioned there: wisdom and stability and peace and caring and all that. So how do we clean the world up, is in a way?
Well, we're going to be talking about that, as I said, but let's just rewind back to the beginning of your own journey, because you came across this whole sphere of teaching with the Brahma Kumaris back in the mid-1980s, which, for those who aren't old enough to know, was a very different world back then. It was a world before the internet, before mobile phones, before social media, before so much of the ways of communication that we take for granted now. And you were living in the Midwest, which is not exactly central station for communication in the US. And yet here you are, taking inspiration from the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris. Tell us the story of how that came about.
All right. Little of the story starts before, a prelude, but I grew up in Iowa, Middle America, United States. Doesn't get any better than that, according to how we thought about ourselves, and Christian tradition. And I'm not sure, I phrased this in a certain way. I'm not sure what I was taught, but this is what I learned. And I learned that needed to behave, because that when I die, I was responsible for an entity, and that was a soul, spiritual. And so I had learned that there is this two parts to me, body and soul. And I had learned that I was responsible for the thing that exists beyond my life. And that was kind of a heavy burden at that time. And with that, when I heard someone speak, and this would have been a speaker from London, great country over there, Sister Genty, and she would have just arranged rebroadcast, or a rebroadcast that was arranged of her talk, indicating that no, there are those too, but we identify in this tradition, the Brahma Kumaris, with the spiritual. And that just struck me so deeply that nothing in my upbringing or awareness or study had changed, but I had just changed my perspective, my positioning on that. And then when I realized that that was true for me, I felt that to be true, that I was the thing that exists outside of the body, that I had this energy, then everything else kind of flowed along. My background was mentioned as engineering. And so there's a lesson that was talked about as karma, which kind of sounds very Eastern. But in the West, it's just a class we took in mechanics, action and reaction, and how things have to work out. And so the spiritual knowledge that was taught matched my upbringing, both in cultural and educational, technological. And so I just kind of kept going deeper into that, and seems to be a good fit for me.
So just to be clear, you were learning all this via a correspondence course.
I did.
So you were being sent your lessons through the mail. And I wonder, assuming at this point you hadn't actually met anyone who was a yogi and meditating.
That's correct. It was the time when there was no internet and there was no texting. And so I heard someone on the radio, and I would have sent a letter to California. And then about a month later, I got a response, and then it sat on my desk for a little while. And I said, I'm interested, send me some books. And so a month later, I got something back, and I took the correspondence course on how to meditate. And it was a packet of lessons, and I would get one, and I would answer questions at the back and mail that. So sometimes they say it's a 7-day course, but for me, it was about a 9-month course. And so I had time to reflect on all of these. And it was quite amazing to learn something and have that aha and awareness, and then be able to kind of let that sink in and settle in. And it was an easy transition for me, but it was quite amazing.
I mean, what for me is amazing about your story is that you kind of did it on your own, because for a lot of us, myself included, it's when we come across that energy, that vibration of purity that we see when we go to a Brahma Kumari center, or we meet someone who's meditating, and it's almost like that spiritual connection is what lights the light within us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet you didn't have that.
No, and it's interesting to talk on the theme today of purity, because that's what centers typically are. Individuals, spiritual beings who are enhancing their power through meditation and remembrance of God. And that vibration is most tangible, you might say, or many people are influenced by that, inspired by that. But I want to put it in another way. That what struck me was the fact that I didn't have to go through any other person's issues or vibrations, but there's a purity in the knowledge. And so that would have resonated for me, that this is, let me think about it. And somehow it was able to penetrate through my cultural defenses and kind of permeate, find its way into that. And then there was that experience of, this is the true knowledge of who I am and how I exist in the world. And I think if I had the opportunity, I might not have ever walked in through a door, because it was different.
Absolutely. Very interesting. I think for each of us, it's tailor-made to be perfect just for us, however it happens. And I wonder what you made of the concept of purity when you first came across it in the teachings, because in our normal cultural lives, purity is really not something that we're even thinking about, never mind aspiring to. And I wonder what you made of it. And I wonder how you would frame a spiritual understanding of purity against a more worldly understanding of what that word means.
Yeah, it would have been a term that I wouldn't have used in my sentences before coming into this knowledge. It's a term that is desirable and enhances things, pure olive oil or pure lemon juice, or so that quality is kind of the mindsets that I would have had about things, that you don't want it tainted or cheapened or whatever. So that concept is there. But the sense of self as pure, it took me a little while to kind of figure out what that means. Am I a pure being? Well, no, I've kind of done things, and I've been around, and I've got some experiences, and I've said stuff, and whatever it is, that we all could look at our lives, I believe, and say, well, I could have done better, I shouldn't have done that, or I wish I would have done different. And so there's that influence of other, which would be an impurity. And so understanding not the external, but that there is a true, original, eternal consciousness, being, soul, self, that is without those influences. And so that sense of there is this pure me that is collected things over it, but that collection of stuff, experiences, and whatever isn't me. And so coming into that and trying to have that as the core of my practice. What am I really? What are my qualities that emanate from me without any of the things that I've thought or done influencing that quality, that vibration? So that understanding of that original, pure self did take me some time to figure out.
I think that's a really important point, that this journey of purity is not a kind of journey towards something that is outside of us. It's a journey to an original state of being.
Yeah.
And I think, we all recognize within us that essential reality of purity when we see it. As an example, when you see a newborn baby, we're all attracted to that vibration and energy of the newborn baby because it carries that untainted, pure, conscious energy, and we kind of see ourselves reflected in that. And so it's our original way of being that we are aspiring to reconnect with.
Yeah.
It's a rejoining rather than a new experience.
Yeah, it's kind of an ignorance of another way of being, that this is just how we're supposed to be. This is the way the world is, how I perceive it. There's only this trust and this love. And so a very good example of those that haven't experienced disappointments or upset or being tricked or anything like that. There's just this total trust, because there is an ignorance of knowing any other way. And that's kind of an example for the purity, correct?
So you went from Illinois and you ended up in Chicago, and you were the main instrument for bringing about a center there in Chicago. And from Chicago, you came to live in New York. So, most of your life as a yogi has been in the big cities. And, I wonder what role you feel retreating from the world plays in order to experience this sense of purity. Because if we think about the other traditions, world traditions that have honored purity, in India, there's the tradition of sannyas, where they go into the jungle or into the mountains and they turn their back on society and they become pure. Or in Christian churches, you go and live in a monastery, a very pure environment where there's no distractions, nothing to pull you back. And yet here at the Brahma Kumaris, this journey towards purity is being lived amidst the chaos and degradation that's going on in the world around us. And yet we do also go on retreat. So how do you see that interplay between being in the world and yet not of the world?
Well, we're a part of the world. And we are also individuals. And so they both go hand in hand. The individual part, is I meditate by myself. It's my thoughts and my experience, and I'm responsible for that. And so I need to get my own act together, so to speak. And I have to do that for myself, and I can do that with others that are in community that would like to have the same experiences, but have that feeling that I am not alone. I'm not going to say that I am God or anything like that either, so that there's a family. And so how can I care and help? And that means to be a part of it. So I need to have the strength to be a part of a situation so that I can help. And the cities are where people are at. I have thought many times in some challenging moments that, gosh, it would be nice just to kind of move out and be away and have this, but that's not what we're called for either. There's something about receiving an experience or truth or something beneficial, and a natural process or response is to share. And so that's where centers come, that's where cities are, that's how we have to figure out, how do I collect something to such a degree and that it is attractive and others would like to find that quality of peace and happiness and purity for themselves also. We have a...
So we're retreating within, in a way, aren't we? We're going within, and that becomes our retreat.
Yes, and also it's good to take a break and step out of those. I mean, I've been to a number of retreat centers. We've got one here in New York. There's another one down in the Dallas area. The GRC, Global Retreat Center, is a magnificent place to step out. And I go to India, and there's kind of a retreat headquarters place there. And those are very, very valuable in order to learn and kind of not have so much noise around you. And in a way to get the energy, get the strength, get the clarity to come back into and have the chance to see if others are interested and help them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've often been in those retreat places that you have talked about, and certainly in India. And my whole heart is like, I just want to stop here for the rest of my days and live a life amongst this greatness. But of course, we have to come back into the world, and that's where the real work is somehow keeping that alive for yourself, whilst being in the physical dimension. And the symbol that is given is of the lotus flower that has its roots very firmly in the mud, and yet it remains above the muddy water and is this thing of beauty and purity, ultimately.
First time I went to India, the headquarters in Madhuban in Rajasthan, Mount Abu, it was nice, and I had a good experience there. And I thought, this could work out. And then I was looking around, and there were some laborers painting, and I said, I could paint. I could do that. And I, kind of talked a little about it. It's not full throttle, but it's like, what if I would stay here? And it was pretty much, no, you're from a place, and that place needs you. And you have a role or a task or an opportunity to be there. And so you should recognize that that's how things are working out for you. And so kind of, okay.
And the system is geared up in such a way as those of us living in the world have these senior teachers that we can draw on and take inspiration from. And you've been very fortunate spending so many of your years in New York and having so much access to Sister Mohini, who is one of our organization's real jewels. Yep. And I wonder what you have learned and noticed and seen and learned about purity from observing the likes of Sister Mohini close up and personal day to day.
Yeah, she's now she was the regional coordinator of the our hemisphere, and now is also a joint administrative additional head. She's actually today in India. But one of the things that I have observed is that when she doesn't have a clear understanding of it, she doesn't worry about it and she doesn't force the decision. And so, okay, let's see, in a way. And then because of that, the qualities that were listed, stability and peace, and that generosity of wanting to help others, there is the silence. And so then there's a clarity that comes. And I've seen her take some time on some decisions. And those are the right decisions. A lot of people are quite happy and yeah, that makes sense. Might not be an easy decision, but it seems to be the clear decision. And I have that feeling that she's very skilled in picking up the vibrations or the signals or the energy of what needs to happen at the right time. And frankly, it can be a little frustrating because not all the information comes in. It's a little like our elections that happened. So some of them are quite quick, this one, this one. But the final decision isn't made until all the votes are counted. And so sometimes decisions are made at the very last moment. No, this is the right thing to do. And you're kind of all set. And so if you like to be prepared and set ahead of time and kind of move, cautiously through what you've planned, making last minute decisions is kind of like, wait a minute, that's not what I was hoping that we would do. But it's the truth that, we can't elect the person until all the votes are counted, and we can't make the best decisions until all the information is available. And sometimes she can make quick decisions, and sometimes it's like, well, I don't think I've got everything, and so let's just see what comes. And I admire that ability to hold an issue or a problem or a concern or a question until it's very clear as to what the right decision should be. I can make very quick decisions for lots of people, but they might not always be the best one. So there's a sign. You want an answer? $1. You want a right answer? $5.
I can imagine with your engineering background, you like things to sort of line up and fit properly and do what they're meant to do at the time that they're meant to do it.
Right.
And yet, spiritual leadership is about working with emergence and things arising and changing, and you have to have the flexibility to go with that. And I think as well, if I look at, the example of leadership that we have and how purity feeds into that, there's also this aspect of doing what is right for the good of the whole. It's what's going to work for everybody. And it's not about selfish motive. It's not about ego. It's not about having power over people or situations. It's about using combined energies to achieve this great goal that we're all on, which is making the world a better place. And that can only happen when we're all uplifted. And we see that as an example in leadership that's specially inspired by spirituality. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes. And it's interesting here. I'm not sure where the audience is, but in the United States, there are commentators who are saying that we have rejected the politics of revenge and vendetta and personal interests over the hoping and wanting those who are willing to address the issues that concern the people. And so that sense of selfishness that's not a ruler. That's not someone who's going to help. And so if they've got their own issues and their own concerns, or in a way, if you want to call it this, an impurity in their mind of who they are and what their task is, and don't see that role of helping as paramount, then there's going to be problems. And so It's kind of nice to see that. I like that interpretation of what happened over here, is that, yeah, we want people who want to help us and will be leaders to move through these difficult times and not waste, time and years on issues that aren't going to help the concerns of most people.
Mm. And it's often said that when you're surrounded by you're swimming in a certain water, and that water is a certain way. Let's just say in society, we have this culture of addiction to one thing or another, whether it's substance addiction or whether it's addiction to consuming media or consumerism generally. That becomes the prevailing norm.
Yeah.
And what is being presented with the Brahma Kumaris is a very different paradigm. And it's almost like we need to see what that looks like in order to know that that is even a possibility.
Yeah. Having someone who can model the behavior, and someone who can live a life and achieve the goals that everybody's looking for. And what I mean by that is that if you are peaceful, if you are happy, if you are courteous, if you have those things and you are using that and sharing that and getting the results that many people would like, then that's an attraction. And I think that's a big part of the bringing out our retreat experiences into the world, to show individuals or to model to individuals that there's a possibility that you might not have seen on how to be happy and content and fit in with society and family and create the relationships and the life that you want.
Mm. And you're talking there about relationships, and in the Brahma Kumaris, it's certainly put forward as an idea to try that if you want to really go quickly on this journey, that to have celibacy as a cornerstone in your life, to have pure vegetarian food as a cornerstone, to have a regular meditation practice. There are these key elements that make up a pure life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what you have found have been the practical benefits in your life over these past 40 years or so, in terms of how that purity shows up for you and supports you in your life.
Great question. The concept of what I want, and part of what I want in my life, I've learned because it eluded me, or it wasn't there. And then having that awareness of who I am and what is ultimately going to make me peaceful, happy, and learning over time a variety of techniques or methods or understanding. Vegetarianism is the example. I can remember coming into this, and I was studying, and it was taking me months. And then one of the lessons was, well, we are spiritual beings. There's a law of karma. Energetically, it is not so good to kill, and it's not great for the soul to take in that energy also, in meat and such like that. And that made sense to me. However, I remember having to think about that, because I had my grandparents, and they grew up on a farm, and there was just all sorts of animals and animal products and things. And I remember thinking, they're not bad people. They weren't, there was nothing wrong with them, but we get into a way of not thinking about what we do. And so that awareness that there might be systems or methods or lifestyles that could bring even a different element into our lives. And so I made the conscious choice that I was going to stop eating meat. Okay, and I remember my last gyros where that was. It's like, okay, and it wasn't a choice because of enjoyment or something. It was a spiritual choice. I'm going to do this because I want to focus in on my well-being, and I connected my happiness and my contentment and those qualities to my spiritual life. And I think that's a big part of it, that to try to do those things without a deep connection to self, true self, soul, is very difficult.
Mm.
It's very easy when you start from that foundation, and lifestyle choices and relationship choices and what can come from a variety of those without tethering it to something that's eternal, might be one way to put it, is very hard to do and not long lasting. And many people find it difficult and a challenge, but actually it's more freeing, rewarding, liberating, if you want to put it that way.
That's beautifully put. And, an outside observer may think that actually, living this life of purity is hard work and involves, sacrifice and doing without. But actually, from what you're saying, it becomes a life that is very sustaining and supporting and releases real joy and happiness and those qualities that we saw at the start of the program. And in a way, if we extend that out, it's the quality of purity that the whole world really needs at the moment, because there is no purity left. There is fake, there is false, there is untruth, there is degradation, there is corruption, there is profit at any cost, there is exploitation. All of these things can be summed up as impure. And the change that needs to happen to transform this world is a shift from impurity to purity. And yet millions of people are going about changing the world in so many different ways without realizing the fundamental change that is needed is this shift from impurity to purity.
It's not an external start either. And I don't think, I'm going to judge billions of people, but I don't think a lot of them want to look at that. I don't think the souls, the people want to address it, because that implies responsibility. And it's easier, and it's very common to find fault outside and feel comfortable in our comfort zone, or not to challenge ourselves. But if I can find fault, then I can feel I'm okay, even though I'm not. And that's a big step, to admit that, this is who I am and this is how I've been. And maybe I've made some mistakes in my thinking and my assumptions, and let me change. And change is not so easy. And so it is a challenge, but it's very easy when you accept that. When you go through that first step and say, okay, well, that's my past, now here I am, then very easy, actually. There's a motivation, there's a power, there's a clarity, there's a focus. But a little help is good too. I remember when I changed my diet, I didn't have a lot of alternatives. It's like, well, now what am I gonna eat? And so having some friends along the line plays out very well too.
I'm just going to say at this point that if anyone listening today would like to ask Erik a question, do please post your question in the chat box, and I'll pick it up and put your question to Erik. So that facility is there for you. But I think in a way, Erik, you're talking about it sometimes being a challenge and being difficult, and that this journey begins with understanding and a change of thinking. But there is another jigsaw in this puzzle which makes everything fall into place, another piece in that jigsaw, and that is a connection with the ultimate example of what we mean by purity. And in Brahma Kumaris, we have this understanding that there is one source, one divine source that is eternally forever a template for everything that we're talking about and what we mean by purity. And through meditation, we can learn to have a connection with this energy source. And that becomes the fuel, that becomes the inspiration to make this transformation possible. Could you say a few words about how you use your connection with this divine source to channel this purity that we're talking about?
The understanding that I'm a spiritual being, soul, was quite profound. It's shifted my world. And there was another element in my upbringing that I accepted, and that I was created in the image of the Creator, in that terminology. And so if I'm a soul, there are other souls, and there is another spiritual being, there's another soul, there's another Creator, however you might want to do that. And I have my personal experience of that I can think about, that I can connect with my thoughts. How to say it, meditate is how we would do it, but basically it's a remembrance that if I'm a spiritual being and I exist outside this body, I'm eternal, and there must be this eternal relationship. So let me just remember that. Let me remember what that's like, because if there's a being who's like me, and I'm going to put out what I think, who loves me, who cares for me, and is only, I use the example of the sun. It only gives out energy. It doesn't take anything from us. And so this Supreme Soul is someone who is always there for me. And if I can hold on to that thought, and if I create that, then that makes that experience powerful. And I feel it's a purifying process, that I accept the energy of a source, of a being that is powerful in my life and allows me to remember, reclaim what my original state is. And each time I do that, I feel a little clearer, a little more powerful to apply that energy in my life. And that's part of the process for me, knowing that there is something out there. And I'm very, very, I had a shock one time. This was a long time ago when I didn't quite realize the dynamics, but I was young enough to think that the President of the United States was kind of a wise and all-knowing person. This was a long time ago. And then I was kind of shocked to realize, like, well, no, they're just kind of men, wherever they are, and they make mistakes. And I was like, that was not comforting at all. And so the sense that that we are in charge of the world is kind of a scary thought. But the idea that we are here and that there is a greater energy that's available was very reassuring for me. So I feel quite comfortable in holding on to that relationship.
Mm. And also, it always made sense to me that, humanity has been on this whole journey, experiencing so many different things, that you need one observer, one source, divine source, to have the complete picture, to be able to say, look, actually, it wasn't always like this, and you haven't always been like this, and look, this is what you are really, and this is what you can become now. Without the role of this divine observer of this human world drama, we would be cast adrift, and we would never know where we had come from or where we were going. Yeah. So it's a vital role.
And when you mention that, a stage comes to mind with someone standing in the audience and everybody else on the stage. I used to do some of that stuff. And when you're trying to remember your own lines and play your own part and what you have to do, you only see a small percentage or perspective from that. And so the director outside, who sees it all, is the one who gives the directions for everybody. And so, yes, I would agree totally that there is an individual who can guide because they have the awareness of everything, as opposed to each of us thinking that we are right, and we're right in our own perspective, but we don't see the whole and how they come together.
Mm-hmm. We've got some questions coming in now. Thank you for your questions. Do keep them coming. One here around recognizing our weaknesses and how we get the strength to continue on this journey, to continue with this process, when we are so abundantly aware of our shortcomings and our weaknesses. And in a way, the destination can feel so far and so high, and we look at ourselves and we think, nah, I know myself, I can see what is there, and I can't do it. How do you keep yourself going through those moments?
For me, when there's a challenge, I try to step back from that and say, well, what else am I going to do? And I don't come up with very good answers for that, because I have the awareness to play things out and see where it goes. And the ending of that isn't very good. And so that kind of refreshes me to think, let me just keep it what I'm doing, because for me, I know what's right for me. I know that I'm spiritual. I know that I'm soul. I know that there are dynamics in the world that operate. And so let me use those to make myself the way I want. It doesn't mean that there won't be obstacles or difficulties or challenges, but I do have the ability to take a step back. And when I work with that other director, things have a way of working out or resolving that I might not have been able to do on my own. And so that partnership is very important to me.
And at the end of the day, you can think there's somewhere else to go, but really, where else is there to go? You can try and run away from yourself, but you're going to bring yourself with you. So you might as well face it and look at it and deal with it.
Yeah, I've played that out. Oh, if I go back to Iowa, I could get a small little acreage. I'd be out here and it would be real nice. And then it's like, well, they don't have good Wi-Fi out there, and I probably wouldn't be able to get the cheese that I like. And, then I can kind of be thinking to come back, and you can kind of play scenarios out in your mind. And it's like, well, that's not going to work out the way I would hope it would or could. So doing what I've got at this time is very, very clear to me, even though I do have some fantasies about, maybe if I go to India, or maybe I go to Iowa, or maybe I go to play it out.
You can run, but you can't hide. You can't hide.
Yeah.
Now you play another role within the organization of sitting on the regional coordinators trustee board, and so you have a kind of an insight into the international running of the organization. And I wonder what you observe in terms of how the dynamics play out amongst these very strong, independent, often, well, nearly always women. And there you are as a brother in a male body. How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's been nice to watch because one of the central aspects of the regional coordinators for the Brahma Kumaris, is the unity of purpose, and different personalities for sure, and different ways of looking at things, and not always in agreement. But there is a sense that, let's see what we can do. Let's understand that we are not the ones creating anything, but they have a great instrument consciousness. That we are the ones who have been asked to help with these things. And as we talked a little earlier, or as I mentioned, the sense of meditation and connection and partnership and being patient for the right thing, that often that comes. And it doesn't come necessarily through one's intellect. We don't always think our way there, but it's a sense that, let's see if we can just pause. And in the meetings, whether you're aware of this or not, and this is true for a lot of Brahma Kumaris, we take time for silence. And so things are being said and it goes back and forth, and I get confused on some of the issues quite regularly, but then we'll have traffic control or a 3-minute pause, or let's take a break and such. And when we come back to it, it seems that we can always move forward. And if there's something that we need more information or more time on, we can agree on that. That's okay. But consensus is a real big part of the organization. And so the cooperation, the partnership, the support is a very dominant force, and that's nice to have. So there's not so much battling and dominance that often can take place in interactions.
And I like that idea of being an instrument, that you're there in a way to get yourself out of the way and let that kind of divine energy work through you. And if everyone is doing that, then you are going to have unity and consensus.
Yeah. And so the more we can purify our intellects, the easier any issue and process becomes, because there will be resolution, and it might not always be what everybody wants or thinks is best, but ultimately that's the right answer.
Well, it's beautiful to see a model of group leadership functioning with these spiritual principles, and I think it's a model that we need to roll out as fast as we can across the world, because we need clarity of direction and clarity of purpose. And you talked there about taking time for silence and tuning in, and it would be lovely if we could spend some time together experiencing that silence. And if I could invite you to lead us with your own thoughts for a closing meditation. It's been such an interesting exploration of your journey with this topic. It has been really inspiring. Thank you so much, Erik. And if you could close us out with a meditation, that would be beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, Dallas, for the invitation, and Philippa, this has been wonderful. I appreciate your interest and your inquiry and your energy to kind of sort out some of these things. So this has been a lovely hour, even though it didn't seem like that. So truly appreciate the opportunity to be with you and everyone here. So
thank you.
I guess a couple moments, but why don't we take a pause from what's been said? And as we sit together, there have been words, there have been ideas. And so let those come to you. What might strike you as resonating? And for me, the word that came up at the very beginning was stability. And when I'm calm, I'm quiet, and I put my mind in a stable place, I can feel an original innocence. I remember how I can be without any influence or pull in a direction that takes me from my true, pure self. That in this silence, I want to hover my mind over the qualities that are natural. I am an eternal spiritual being with the qualities of peace and love, contentment. And I see these words and I experience their qualities. And it leads me back to my original, true, pure self. And may for all of us, you hold on to that vibration and that awareness and take that and share that in your community also. We are pure. We are truth. And we are at the end of the hour. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Brother Erik, to share with us your secrets and ingredients for moving forward on this spiritual path, and also to take responsibility and serve. And so beautifully you shared, and I hope we will call you again to listen more and more. And Sister Philippa, thank you so much for beautiful questions again. And we continue this series because we want to bring this purity out from within. And people or world need to know the purity is so important in our life. No matter what they are doing, but purity is so important in our activities, in our vision, in our attitude, and our actions. So thank you so much, everyone, those who have joined on Zoom meeting and those who are here in audience. So thank you, everyone, and thank you very much from us to Brother Erik.
Thank you for the invitation. This has been wonderful.
It's our fortune to have you both here. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Om Shanti.
Bye-bye.
Bye.